Hello, welcome to your summary under some short minutes because I never stick to a time, preferably 15. We are doing From the Diary of Anne Frank today, a very important chapter and something that you need to really understand because it's taught wrong on a lot of platforms. And I will explain to you why that confusion arises, okay? So first of all, we need some historical context on who Anne Frank was, okay? Anne Frank was a victim of the Nazi-led genocide against Jews, which is called the Holocaust, okay? Anne Frank was a German-born Jewish girl and she was killed in a Nazi concentration camp along with other family members. The only surviving member from her immediate family was her dad, Otto Frank, who later published Anne's diary. Now, Anne wrote this diary while she was in hiding in German-occupied Netherlands, right? So, Otto and his family, they hid in a place where Otto used to work so that they are not taken to concentration camps by the Nazis, but somebody gives their whereabouts and they are arrested and taken to a concentration camp where Anne and her sister die. And the reason why this is such an important work is because it gives us a personal story, not a statistical story, not a journalistic story, but a very personal story of what it means to go through a genocide, to be in a genocide, to be a part of a community that is killed for no real logical reason. And this is very important even in today's world because it's not that only Jews have been a victim of genocide. Many societies all around the world, many people, many ethnicities are victims of genocide, and we need to understand that it's wrong for all, okay? And knowing a personal story of an innocent little girl who's killed off at the age of 16 for no fault of hers, simply because she was born into a particular community, it should be horrifying and it should make us feel bad for the genocides happening in the world around us right now. Now, with that historical context in mind, you need to know that the portion of this story in your syllabus has nothing to do with the Holocaust. It doesn't tell us anything about the rise of Nazism in Germany. It is simply the musings of a little girl who is around your age, younger obviously, but who is talking about her preteen, teenage years, what school is like, what life is like. And it's very relatable for people your age to see that, okay, others, regardless of where they are in the world or in what time period, go through similar emotions and similar experiences, all right? So what are the key events of the chapter? The only parts of the diary that are covered here are when Anne explains why she writes a diary in the first place. She talks a little bit about her family, she talks about her school, and she talks about her math teacher. So it starts with Anne, she begins by exploring why she likes to write, and she says that even though it feels strange writing in a diary, she needs to do it because she doesn't have anybody else in her life that she feels close enough to share all of these things with. So her diary is her best friend. Her diary is a confidant. A confidant is someone that you tell your deepest secrets to, that you trust. And she also feels that paper has more patience than people, which is such a great alliterative sentence. And the fact that she wrote it, obviously it's been translated, but it's such a great message as well, that paper has more patience than people and it listens without judgment. It just takes everything you're giving it, right? So that's why she writes. And this to come from a 13-year-old's mind should tell you how wise Anne truly was, right? And so because her diary is her best friend, she names it and she calls her diary Kitty. Now she feels that maybe later in life, there will come a point where she finds someone that she trusts as much as she trusts Kitty, and so she might have them read her diary. She did not know at that point that the entire world is going to read her diary for years and years and years to come. But she thought that if somebody else wants to read her diary, they should have a little bit of context. And they should know the people that she keeps mentioning. So she gives a little background of her family. She talks about her adorable father. She says he's the most adorable father in the world. She talks about her older sister Margot. She talks about when her father and mother got married, and then her grandmother talks about how they moved from Frankfurt to Holland. and lived with their grandmother. And then she talks about how while she was living with her grandmother in the Netherlands, she was in a Montessori school, and there she, after she reached her 6th form, she was to move back to Frankfurt. 6th form is 6th grade or 6th standard. And so Mrs. Kuperus, the headmistress there, she was really attached to her, and they both cried when she was leaving, right? She then talks about the death of her grandmother, how it impacted her, and how she loved and she still misses her grandmother dearly. Then we move on to her school life. This is where Anne talks about school. Here we get good lines like, teachers are the most unpredictable creatures on earth. She talks about how everyone's really nervous about failing. God knows who's going to be promoted to the next form. We can't trust teachers with anything. If the dummies who are supposed to fail, they might get, they might go to the next class. She then says that personally she is only worried about maths because Mr. Keesing, the old fogey, as in the very old-fashioned teacher who teaches maths, is a little strict, very, disciplinarian kind of a person, and she is not quite sure how she did in maths. Then we come to Mr. Keesing. Some time is spent talking about him. I feel like a lot of students have this love-hate relationship with their maths teachers. I personally did. And so Anne is like, she loves talking a lot, which we can see that, even when she's writing in her diary, she's very eloquent. She really knows how to put her thoughts into words. And she has a lot of thoughts. So she talks a lot in class as well. And so Mr. Keesing gets increasingly annoyed with her. So first time he punishes her, asks her to write an essay called a chatterbox. Now Anne, instead of taking it as a punishment, uses it as an opportunity to justify why she's a chatterbox. And she says, this is a trait that she can't control. It's in her genes. Her mother also talks a lot. And so she can try to suppress it a little bit, but she can't promise that she can change herself. And then she gets another punishment. An incorrigible chatterbox is the name of the next essay she has to write. Incorrigible means incapable of changing, very hard to change, very adamant, stubborn. And then finally we have quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox, where Anne also gets creative, and instead of writing an essay, she writes a poem about a duck family where the father duck bites the mother and the ducklings to death because they quack a lot. Alright, so here we know that Anne is also witty and is also very confident in herself, and she really believes in her value system and her beliefs, and she questions everything, which again is a sign of intelligence, right? So that was basically what takes place in the chapter. Then the important characters here, obviously we have Anne Frank, we have Mr. Keesing. Anne Frank is obviously witty, observant, self-aware, sensitive, and wise beyond her years. Mr. Keesing, not a major character, but still you get questions related to him. So he's strict, but he's fair. So he is also open-minded. He's not stuck in his ways. He's not like, if you can't talk, you can't talk. He does read what Anne has written, and he does, get a little soft towards the end. He has this hidden sense of humor that he laughs at what Anne has written, and as an ode to that, he also gives her the quack, 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 Mistress Chatterbox as the title of her essay, because he understands that, even Anne is enjoying this process, and maybe he too is enjoying it, right? So he's not as cold-hearted as he seemed in the beginning. So what are the major themes here? If somebody tells you the major theme is, fighting the Holocaust, fighting Nazis, strength in the face of adversity, that's wrong. Those are themes of the book, right? The Diary of Anne Frank. But here, the Diary of a Young Girl, that's the name of the book. But here, that's not the theme of your chapter. Themes in your chapter, adolescence and growing up, how it feels to be a teenager. Because you've gone from being a child who's dependent on others to somebody who's, making up their own mind about the world, forming their own ideologies, exploring different things. It's about loneliness and need for expression, how if you don't have somebody in your life that you can share things with, you still need someone or something, and Anne finds that in her diary. It also touches upon student-teacher relationships, how Mr. Keesing and Anne both learn from each other, both grow with each other, right? So it's not always the teacher teaching the student. Sometimes the student can also teach the teacher. Okay, now here are some important things to remember from an exam perspective from this chapter. Paper has more patience than people. This line, you can get a question that asks you to explain why Anne said this or what this means. I've already explained that to you, so you can do that. Musings of a 13-year-old girl. Now the question here will be, why is this ironic? The reason why this is ironic is Anne was wondering who is going to be interested in reading my diary, who wants to read the musings or just the random thoughts, the ramblings of a 13-year-old girl. And ironically, the entire world has been reading it consistently. It's one of the most translated, most published books in the world, right? So she thought, who will be interested? Everybody is interested. That's what's ironic. Why Anne named her diary, again, I've explained this to you. You might get a question like this. Teachers are the most unpredictable creatures on earth. Do you agree or disagree? That's the question you can get. And you can give your own justification for this. All right. That brings me to the end of the summary. Hope that helped. I will see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.